Hello everybody and welcome back to another video of English No Big Deal. My name is David.
And I'm Maddie.
In today's video, we're gonna do part 2 of Conversation 20. And same as usual, we're gonna ask Maddie about the conversation and the significance or the importance of it. So Maddie, can you tell them a little bit about that?
Conversation 20 is all about the news and important information that you should know. In this conversation, we use many different phrases, but all of these phrases are very common and you will hear them in the news or any other ones that are very important. So if you want to understand what you hear on the news or whatever someone else is telling you, then it's definitely worth going over these phrases and understanding them. And as usual, these phrases can also be used in a variety of situations. So not just with the news, but you'll have to stay tuned in order to understand.
If you like this video or this type of content that we're creating, just don't forget to click on that thumbs up button and also subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on any of our future videos. Now, with everything in mind, let's get straight into our today's content. Number 1. Affect and affected. Hey Maddie, do you see the news this morning?
I had it turned on, but I wasn't actually listening. Why? Did I miss something?
Did you hear the bit about how the fires in British Columbia have been affecting the air quality across Alberta? First of all, we're going to go over the pronunciation of the word affect. Affect. So there are 2 syllables for this word. The first one is only having the vowel sound, so and then fact is second syllable. So fact ends with the k and the t sound. So fact, effect. And also don't forget to stress for the primary stress on the second syllable. And if you pronounce this word correctly, then you'll be able to pronounce its past tense correctly as well. So affected. The ed part in this word is going to be pronounced as id. So affected. But don't forget to enunciate the d sound at the end of this word. Affected. And one more important thing that you guys have to keep in mind is that affect doesn't have anything to do with effect, because effect is a noun while affect is a verb, right? So affect and effect. Affect and effect. And don't mix up between the 2.
Now, as David has already mentioned, affect is the verb form, while effect is its noun form. And if something is affected or has an effect on something, that just means that it has an impact on something or somebody. Let's say smoking has an effect on your health. This just means that smoking impacts your health. Or gossip affects your work relationships. Again, this just means that gossip impacts your work relationships. Referring back to the conversation, this word was used in past participle when David asked Maddie if she heard the piece of information about how the wildfires in British Columbia have affected Alberta. Now, this just means that the smoke from the wildfires has an impact on the environment in Alberta. So maybe people have a problem with breathing or experience other health issues. And this is the way that it is impacted from the smoke. Now, to provide you guys with some examples so that you can use this word in a variety of situations. The first example, excessive use of social media can have an effect on your mental health. Now, this just means that excessive use of social media can impact your mental health. Typically, we hear about this in a negative sense because people who use social media way too much can end up feeling depressed or anxious about things. So that is why it's recommended to not use social media excessively.
And part of the reason that they become so depressed or stressed out in life or in their own circumstances is because after watching or using so much social media, they started to compare themselves and their lives with other people, and they kind of lose touch with their reality. Now let's move on to the next example. Elderly people can be horribly and fatally affected by some strong variants of COVID-19. And this has been proven to be true as COVID-19 mutates and gets stronger or spreads wider. More variants have been discovered and proven to be stronger than its original one. So even though elderly people may have had enough vaccine, but their immune system is still vulnerable to the effect of it.
Number 2, quality.
Did you hear the bit about how the fires in British Columbia have been affecting the air quality across Alberta?
For this word, we're going to concentrate on that T sound. Now, for North American English, when the T comes between two vowels, we'll change it to a D sound. So instead of saying quality, we'll say quality. Quality. The last thing that you need to be aware of is the E that is coming at the end of this word. Make sure that it is clearly enunciated. That way it's very distinct. So say this with me. Quality. Quality. Quality.
You may have known this word already, but another thing that you need to know about this word is that not only it can be a noun, like the way that you see it most of the time, normally, but it can also be an adjective and only be used before a noun of goods, services, or products to mean good or of high quality. Some of the phrases that you are most likely to hear or see every day is quality time, quality products, or quality services. And these phrases mean good time, good services, or good products. In the conversation, David used this word as a noun when he referred to the air quality of Alberta being affected by the smoke or the fires in British Columbia. And the word quality in here is used to talk about how good the air quality is or how good the air is for people when it's affected by the smoke from all the fires coming from British Columbia. Now it's time for the examples, and the first one is, when learning English vocabulary, quality should be put over quantity. So it doesn't matter how many you learn, but how well you use them. So many studies have shown that if you know and being able to use over 5,000 words in English, you can speak it fluently. But the problem is, a lot of people might know more than 5,000 words in English, but they don't know how to use them effectively in their communication or daily conversations. So if you want to be able to be fluent in English, stop learning more, but try to focus more on the quality of your studying. So if you learn 10 words and you know how to use them effectively in your communication, then you'll be able to be more fluent than someone who learns probably 20 words, 100 words, but don't know how to use them at all.
Going to the second example, squeezing quality family time into your routine will both improve family dynamic and instill great habits for future generations to come. So all this means is how good of a time you're spending with your family. Are you guys communicating, talking, playing games together, rather than just sitting in the same room on your phones? If you're doing that one, then you're not spending quality family time. So it does not matter how much time you guys spend in the same room, but how well you're communicating, talking, or playing with each other. And that is quality family time. So by spending quality family time together, you can improve the family dynamic and also teach really great habits to your children and the future generations.
Number 3, worsen and better.
The newscaster said that even though things seem fine now, we should expect the air quality to worsen as the wind blows the smoke through the city.
First, the pronunciation upon the word worsen can be very simple. There are 2 syllables for this word. The first one is were And the second one is sen, worsen. But when pronouncing this word, there's only one thing that you have to be aware of is that you have to enunciate the R sound very distinctly. So worsen, don't say worsen, don't say worsen. It doesn't really sound correctly in the ear of native speakers. So worsen, worsen. And the second word is better. This word is one of the most commonly used words in English. So notice the way that I say it, better, better. So I changed, or I turned the T in the middle into a flap D sound. So I don't say better, but I say better, better, because that's how most native speakers in North America would pronounce this word. So better, better. So say these words with me one more time. Worsen, worsen, better, better.
Now, worsen is a verb to mean to make something worse or more bad than it previously was. Now, don't mix up the word worsen with its adjective forms bad, worse, and worst. Now, of course, the opposite of worsen is better, and its adjective forms are good, better, and best. Now we can also use the word better as a verb, and of course this just means to make something better or more good than what it previously was. In the conversation, the word worsen was used, and Maddie said that we should expect the air quality to worsen as the wind blows the smoke through the city. So this just means that we should expect the air quality to get worse or more bad as the wind blows the smoke through the city. So again, this just means right now the air quality is not great and it will get worse or more bad. But using worsen makes this whole thing sound a lot better and the flow of the sentence sounds really nice. So saying we should expect the air quality to worsen as the wind blows the smoke through the city. Moving on to the examples. The first example, those who are self-opinionated tend to worsen their relationships as they try to impose their opinions on others. So, of course, you're gonna make your relationships more bad or worse as you try to push or impose your opinions on others, telling them that they should have the same opinion as you, no matter what.
And the reason they do it is because they are opinionated people, and opinionated people are also conceited people. So they tend to think of themselves very highly, and so they are refusing to listen to other people's opinion about things, but only be focused on what they think and how they feel about some certain aspects. Alright, let's now move on to the next example. To better your outlook on life, try to be open-minded to learning new things and don't close yourself off to opportunities. This statement is so true because in order to make your opinions or your outlook on life better, you need to continue learning more new things, right? But in order to do that, you have to stay open-minded so you won't be opposing to new things or to probably opposite opinions that people have about some certain things in life. And don't ever close yourself off to the opportunities in order to learn more new things.
Number 4, general population and general public.
The same thing happens every year, so I think the general population knows how to deal with the situation.
There are quite a few things to concentrate on for these two phrases. So first, we're going to look at the word population. First thing to take note of is there are two p sounds. Both of them have to be very clear. Do not skip any of them, drop them, or change them to a b sound. Pop-u, pop-u. Now for the second p sound, it's going to be followed with a y sound immediately, so this might be a little tricky. So look at how I am saying it. Watch my mouth. Popu, pew, popu. Now say this word with me. Population, population, population. Now the second word is a little bit easier. Public, public. We have both a p and a b sound. So don't switch them up or change them. Don't say public or public. Not correct. Public, public. Now say this whole thing with me 2 more times. General population and general public. General population and general public.
General population or general public means the population or all the people who live in a particular area or nation. And you can use these phrases interchangeably in a variety of circumstances. So in the conversation, after stating that the wildfires seem to happen every single year, Mari said she believed that the general population knew how to deal with this situation. And this means that everybody who lives in the affected areas would know how to deal with these circumstances of wildfires, such as keeping their doors and their windows closed, as well as avoiding going out. Now to help you understand how to use these phrases more correctly, let us give you some more examples. And the first one is, during states of emergencies, the authorities will address the general public to raise their awareness of the situation. Let's say there's a storm off the coast and is approaching the land, and everybody will be in danger if the authorities won't notify or inform the general population of how deadly or dangerous it's gonna be, right? So people can get prepared to deal with this circumstance.
And of course, within this example, you can switch out general public for general population and vice versa. Both of these work. It just depends on which one you want to use. In the second example, expats living in a foreign country may not be as well informed as the general population because maybe they don't speak the language. So this just means that expats who live in a foreign country, of course, they're not from there, and if they don't speak the language, then they're not as well informed as somebody who lives in the area, is from there, and speaks the language. So let's say, for example, during COVID, new regulations were always popping up and things were always changing. And you have to stay up to date with all of these regulations in whatever country you're in. That way you're not breaking the new laws or any of the restrictions. So expats might have had a harder time keeping up to date on these restrictions compared to the general public or general population because they're from that area and they speak the language.
Number 5, hence.
Well, from the months of May to September, forest fires or wildfires are pretty common, hence why they call these months fire season.
Since this one has only one word, so it's supposed to be very easy to pronounce. The word hence has the vowel S sound, so he, and then it has the N that is following the S sound and it ends with the S sound, so hence. Hence. Say it one more time with me. Hence. Hence.
Hence is an adverb that means for this reason or because of that, and is synonymous to therefore and so. Let's say you give somebody a reason that they should read daily. Then you could say, hence, reading is an activity that everyone should do regularly. It simply means that with the reason you stated previously, everyone should be reading regularly. And this is exactly how this word was used in the conversation after Maddie made it clear that wildfires or forest fires are very common from the months of May to September. Hence, they call these months fire season. And of course, you can substitute the word hence with the words therefore and so, because it means exactly the same thing. For you to know how to use this word better, let's give you some examples. The first one, daily vitamins have been proven to prevent cognitive decline. Hence, taking them daily is a must to invigorate your health. Of course, again, you can substitute the word hence here with the words therefore or so, and it'll still mean the same exact thing.
And the reason you use the word hence here is because you already gave them the reason of why daily vitamins are important for their health. Now let's come up with the next example. A good education is not the only thing to help secure a good career. Hence, you should also be thinking of valuable skills as well as experiences. And this is so true, right? Because many employers out there, not only will they look at your education background, but they want to know what kind of skills and experiences you have in order to take on the position that they have available at their company. Hence, you should also be thinking about those valuable skills and experiences.
And to build those valuable skills and experiences, you should do volunteer work or find a job as a student that pertains to doing similar work that you would like to do in your career. So let's say you want to be a manager. You have to have really great communication skills. So if you find a job that requires you to do a lot of teamwork, then that would be a perfect skill and experience for the application or the resume that you're filling out, and that would make it more appealing to the employers.
In short, your grades won't tell much about you, but your capability when it comes to finding a good career in the future.
Number 6, enact and enactment.
They also enacted laws banning any type of burning during these months so that somebody doesn't accidentally light a fire.
For the first word, enact, we're going to concentrate firstly on that ah sound, that butterfly ah. Make sure that it is clear and you don't change the sound to any other vowel. Enact, enact. The second thing you need to concentrate on for this word is the ending sounds. The k and the t are right next to each other and they have to be really clear. Don't skip any of the sounds or drop them. Don't say enact, not correct, or enact. Again, not correct. Enact, enact. Now for the other word, enactment, you can make that k and t sound more subtle, but don't completely drop them. Don't say enactment, not correct. Enactment. I still have that k and t sound there, but it's just not as clear. And make sure that you're not over enunciating those sounds as well. Don't say enactment, enactment, not correct. Enactment, enactment. See how the sound is a little bit more quiet and not as well enunciated in this word, enactment. Now say both of these with me one more time. Enact, enact, and enactment, enactment.
The verb enact and its noun form enactment are used when talking about laws and regulations. When a government of a country enacts a law, that means it's passing a law, and so the general public has to adhere to it. In daily conversations, you might notice people use its passive voice very often, be enacted. So in the conversation, Maddie said that Canada has also enacted many laws to prevent people from accidentally starting a wildfire. And that means that many laws have been passed or enacted, and Canadians have to adhere to it, have to abide by the laws, or else they'll be punished. And now, if everything is clear, let us give you some more examples to practice along with. And the first one is, during COVID-19, many countries have enacted regulations around social distancing to help prevent the spread of the virus.
So that just means that they passed new rules, regulations, or laws about social distancing to make sure that people weren't spreading the virus. We heard this a lot. People couldn't gather in groups of 5 or even more than 2. And some people were locked down, meaning they couldn't even go out of their house. So they enacted all of these new rules and regulations to slow the spread. Giving you one more example, the second one, my school enacted a new dress code under which it prevents students from wearing revealing clothing. So the school came up with a new rule where students cannot wear revealing clothing. And all of the students have to abide by or follow this new rule. Otherwise, they could be punished and get in serious trouble.
Number 7. Ban.
They also enacted laws banning any type of burning during these months.
At first, this word seems to be very easy for its pronunciation, but if you don't take note of the difference between the butterfly as out and as out, then it might be a little bit of a problem for you to pronounce this one correctly. So, ban, ban. It sounds like you are mixing up between the as out and the as out, but one thing to take note here is that you have to drop your jaw a little bit further down, so the butterfly as out is going to be well enunciated. So ban. But if you don't do it like that, if you don't have that jaw drop, then it's going to be like Ben, Ben, like Uncle Ben in Spider-Man. So notice the difference. Ban and Ben. Ban and Ben. Ben and ban. Okay?
The word ban is both a noun and a verb. In its verb form, if something is banned, then that means that thing is not allowed or it is prohibited. For example, in Canada, drinking in public areas used to be banned. That just means that you could not drink alcohol in any public areas because it was not allowed or it is prohibited. This has the exact same meaning in the conversation when Maddie said that Canada enacted many laws and regulations that banned any type of burning during fire season. That just means that you could not start a fire of any kind because it was not allowed or it is prohibited during the months of fire season. Now it's time for the other examples. The first one, many schools in the US have banned chewing gum in the classrooms. So this just means that many schools in America or the US does not allow chewing gum in the classrooms. It is prohibited to chew gum in the classrooms. The reason being is because some students are very naughty and they'll take the gum out of their mouth and stick it under the desk or under the chair, which is really nasty for a lot of students that accidentally touch it, or for the janitorial staff that have to clean it up. And since this was an ongoing problem for a long time, most schools just decided to ban chewing gum altogether in the classrooms.
Now, moving on to the next example. A lot of ultra-processed foods that are available in the US are banned in many other parts of the world.
So what ultra-processed foods are just things that are heavily processed and contain a lot of additives. For example, potato chips, pastas, other kinds of snacks and sweets. All of these are ultra-processed foods and they contain a lot of additives. And the reason a lot of these ultra-processed foods are banned in other parts of the world is because they contain unhealthy additives that can add to weight gain or other health risks. So that is why these foods, or some of these foods, are banned, prohibited, or not allowed to be sold in many other parts of the world. Number 8, restriction, restrict, restrictive, and restricted.
Well, from what I've heard and read online, some places place fire bans. These bans or restrictions are subject to change depending on the weather or area you're in.
For the pronunciation, all of the words except for the word restriction contain the kt sound, similar to the word enact. And again, we're gonna make those kt sounds very subtle, but again, you can't drop them or skip them. So the first word, restrict. Again, here that kt, kt sound at the end is very clear and well enunciated. But for restrictive, it's a little bit more subtle, not as clear. Restrictive. I'm not dropping them or skipping them, and it's still there. Restrictive. And it's going to be the same way for restricted. Now say all of this with me one more time. The first one, restriction. Number 2, restrict. Third one, restrictive. And the last one, restricted.
Restriction is a noun, while restrict is a verb. And its two adjectives are restrictive and restricted. And all of these words are used to talk about a rule or a law to limit what people can do or a group of people can do. And while restriction and restrict are pretty easy to use, you need to be careful when using its adjective forms. So restrictive is used to talk about a law or a system that limits people or what they want to do, while restricted is used to talk about those people having their right limited by those laws or those rules. In the conversation, Mari mentioned that the government of Canada has placed many fire restrictions during fire season, so you should check the fire restrictions in your area before starting a fire. And all this means is that the government of Canada has taken some action to limit what people can do when burning stuff outside. Now, if everything is clear, let us give you some more examples so you can enhance your understanding for these words. And the first one is, big organizations in North America restrict husbands and wives working in the same department. This simply means that those big companies or big organizations in North America don't want husbands and wives to work in the same department of their company. Why? Because they want to avoid conflict. They want to avoid the environment of self-gain as well as some other problems that may appear when husbands and wives are working in the same department.
Going on to the second example, some elite colleges and universities in North America have restrictive housing policies which limit the options of where students are allowed to live. So in this case, when we're using restrictive, that just means that they're limiting the options, or they're only allowed to live in certain places. And students, of course, don't want to be in a place that they may not like, or they have some other options that they would prefer. But they don't have those options anymore. They're only allowed to go for the housing options that the universities or colleges have. And some of these housing options might be the dormitories that they have on the campus, some homestays for foreign students, so on and so forth, but they are not allowed to live anywhere else aside from those. A true example, one of my friends, they were required to live on campus in the dorms for the first 2 years of their college degree. So they were not allowed to live anywhere else, and this policy was really restrictive. There were no exceptions.
Number 9, be subject to change.
Well, from what I've heard and read online, some places place fire bans. These bans or restrictions are subject to change depending on the weather or area you're in.
The pronunciation for this phrase is going to be relying upon 2 words. The first one is going to be subject, and the second one is going to be change. For the first one, subject. And in this particular phrase, the word subject has to be an adjective. And the second word is change. I remember I talked about this word so many times before, but I'll do it in this video here again. Change. First of all, its vowel is the A sound, so chain. And then you end the whole word with the CH sound, the voice CH sound. So all you need to do is to limit the amount of air that you push out for the CH sound at the end. So change. And notice that the N sound within this word has to be very clearly pronounced or enunciated. So change. Now say this whole phrase with me once or maybe twice. Be subject to change. Be subject to change.
If something is subject to change, that means that it is likely affected and may be different in some conditions or events. You'll see this phrase a lot in things like contracts and agreements. For example, let's say you're renting a room, and in your rental agreement there is a clause stating that your monthly rent is subject to change. So that just means that your monthly rent can either go up or down depending on certain conditions or events. In the conversation, it was mentioned that fire restrictions are subject to change depending on the weather and the area. So the thing that is being affected are fire restrictions, and the conditions or the events are the weather and the area. So these 2 things are affecting fire restrictions. That means that the fire restrictions can change and either be lifted or more restrictive depending on these 2 things. Now it's time to move on to the examples. The first one, North America has restrictive hunting regulations that are subject to change depending on the species, the time of the year, and also the population size. So this is actually very common in the US. You have to look up the restrictions in your area and to see how much you can hunt a certain species. For example, in some years, you can only have 1 or 2 deer that you can hunt, and that is it. You cannot have any more, otherwise you will be fined.
I think I heard of this before, but for the geese in Canada, because the population of geese in Canada is really large and it's getting larger and larger. So the authorities or the country tries to limit its population by allowing people to use it for food or to hunt it for some other uses. But this is still subject to change depending on the size of the population of geese in Canada. Maybe in the future, who knows, maybe geese will become more scarce, and so people won't be allowed to hunt geese anymore just as much as how they are allowed right now. Alright, let's move on to the second example. When purchasing airplane tickets, be aware that the departure and arrival times are subject to change due to the unpredictability of weather conditions. And this has to be stated very clearly on the ticket or when you purchase the ticket to let you know that the times of your flight can be changed or might be changed due to the bad weather conditions. So make sure you don't ignore this piece of information so you won't get upset or frustrated when your flight gets delayed or postponed.
Number 10, common knowledge and common sense.
It's common knowledge now to check the fire restrictions before starting a campfire or such. And I'm pretty sure it's common sense to keep your doors and windows closed and locked, right?
Now, out of these two phrases, we're going to concentrate on the word knowledge. First thing, similar to know, like you know something, the K in this word is silent. That's why it's important to know IPA. So you don't say knowledge, no, just knowledge. The second thing that we need to look at is the E, the letter E in knowledge. So even though it is spelled with an E, we pronounce it with the I sound, the short E. We don't say knowledge, no. Knowledge, knowledge. Now say this whole thing with me 2 more times. Common knowledge, common knowledge, common knowledge, and common sense, common sense.
Common knowledge is used to talk about something or a piece of knowledge known to most people. This is something that was taught in schools, through media, or advertisements, while common sense has everything to do with an individual's ability to think in a practical way to make good judgments. Common sense is usually unspoken and unwritten. In the conversation, Marty said that it was common knowledge to check the fire restrictions in your area before starting a campfire. This means that this knowledge is known by a lot of people because they were taught this either in school or elsewhere. Marty also said that it's common sense to keep your windows and doors closed and locked to keep the smoke out of your house. And when saying this, she actually indicated that David should use his good judgments in order to figure out what to do to deal with the circumstance. Now, I hope everything is clear, and let us give you some more examples now so you have something to practice with. And the first example is, it is common knowledge to give up your seat on a crowded bus or train to an elderly person or a pregnant lady. I think that social media has been talking about this for a long time, and this is also something that is taught in school as well for pupils or students to learn more of that manner so they can be more polite and have that courtesy when using public transportation.
You'll also commonly see signs saying seat is reserved for elderly, women who are pregnant, and disabled people. So if somebody who meets one of those requirements gets on the bus, then you should move out of that seating and give it up for one of them. That's why this is used as common knowledge, because it is taught. And the second example, it is common sense to not be loud in a hospital as people are trying to rest. So here you should use good judgment and not be loud. Try to be as quiet as you can in a hospital, because when people are feeling sick, they're hurt, and trying to sleep, it's really hard if someone is being loud. So that's why you have to use good judgment here and be quiet.
Number 11, or such and such.
It's common knowledge now to check the fire restrictions before starting a campfire or such.
There's only one pronunciation point that you have to be aware of here, and it is all about the word such. So such has that sound as its vowel, so you say su, and then you end it with the voiceless ch sound. You have such, such, right? Now plug it in the phrases we're talking about here and say it with me a few more times. or such, and such, and such.
In many cases, the word such is used to emphasize something. So, for example, such a good gift or such a wonderful day. The word such here is just emphasizing how great these two things are. But in other cases, the word such is used to talk about something similar to the thing that was previously mentioned. So, for example, in my leisure time, I like to watch movies, TV shows, and such. So the phrase and such here means anything similar to movies and TV shows, probably any types of videos that I find interesting. And this is exactly how such was used in the conversation, when Maddie said that it is common knowledge to check the fire restrictions in your area before starting a campfire or such. So the phrase or such here just means anything similar to a campfire. It can be any type of burning or any type of fire, and you have to check the fire restrictions before doing those things. Now it's time for the examples. The first one, general contractors can help you complete renovations for your house, like fixing the windows, redoing the bathroom, or such. Or such here just means anything like that, including anything that you want to fix in your house.
And the second example is, some students excel in science subjects such as math, physics, chemistry, and such. And such here is basically including everything that is about numbers or about science, something like that. And those students are really good at it. That's why they excel in all of those classes.
Number 12, precaution and precautionary.
Yeah, I have a few suggestions. On the health services site, they have a lot of helpful information about taking the proper precautions.
The first thing for the pronunciation for both of these words is upon the sh sound. Precaution. Don't change that sh to a s sound. Don't say precaution. Not correct. Precaution. Precaution. And we're going to pronounce it the same way in the word precautionary. Precautionary. Don't say precautionary. We're also going to look at the eh sound. Don't say ah or Say precautionary. Nary. Precautionary. Now say both of these with me a few more times. Precaution. Precaution. And precautionary. Precautionary.
Precaution is a noun and it means something that you do ahead of time or in advance in order to prevent a dangerous situation, thing, or problem from happening. Precautionary is an adjective and it means something that is done in order to prevent those things from happening or occurring. In the conversation, Maddie said that the health services site has a lot of helpful information about taking proper precautions for your health during fire season. And this means that the site has a lot of good information to help you do something beforehand or about the measures that you should take in order to avoid any health risks from all the fires. Now, to help you understand how to use these words better, let us give you some more examples. And the first one is, when signing up for a gym membership for a precaution, the gym will have you sign a contract saying that they're not liable for any injuries caused by poor form or postures or misuse of equipment.
So they do this so they're not legally held responsible for any injuries that you cause upon yourself. And in this case, they're doing it so that they don't have to pay out any money for any injuries. Now, in the second example, as a precautionary measure, the janitorial staff will leave out a wet floor sign after mopping to let people know that they need to be careful not to slip. So they also don't want to be legally held responsible for any injuries, because if people don't see that the floor is wet and they slip, then of course the company or the building will have to be liable and pay out a lump sum of money for any injuries caused. So as a precautionary measure or something that they do beforehand, they make sure to leave out a wet floor sign so that they don't get in any trouble.
Number 13, risk of exposure.
Yeah, I have a few suggestions. On the health services site, they have a lot of helpful information about taking the proper precautions and reducing your risk of exposure.
There are a few pronunciation points for this whole phrase, and the first one is about the final sound of the word risk. So risk, when you are pronouncing this word alone, it has the sk sound at the end, so risk, risk. And don't skip it or drop these sounds, alright? Risk. And the second point is about the linking between risk and of. Risk of, risk of. And please don't say risk off, but risk of. And the last pronunciation point is upon the word exposure. Expose, expose, and then the last syllable is zher, zher. It has that zh sound, so exposure. Please don't say exposure or exposure because they are all wrong. Exposure, exposure. Now say this phrase with me one more time. Risk of exposure, risk of exposure. Risk of exposure.
The word exposure itself means to be in a place, situation, or to be in contact with something that is harmful or dangerous. And high risk of exposure means that you're likely to be in contact with that dangerous or harmful thing without protection. In the conversation, Maddie said that we need to take proper precautions in order to reduce our risk of exposure. Reduce risk of exposure here means that you minimize your risk or the likelihood of you or your health being negatively impacted by the smoke. Now that that is clear, we're going to move on to the examples. The first example, although most of us have had 3 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, we still have to wear masks to help others, such as elderly people, minimize their risk of exposure. So as we've already mentioned in this video, elderly people can be seriously impacted by COVID-19. That is why we have to help reduce the risk of exposure by wearing masks.
And wearing masks is not just for protecting yourself, but in this case, to help minimize the risk of exposure for other people, especially old people. Moving on to the next example. Wearing sunscreen can decrease your risk of exposure to the sun's harmful UV rays, thus reducing your risk of skin cancer. So in this case, wearing sunscreen to help you have more protection when you are under the sun, and your skin is not going to be harmed in a particular way, and you don't have to deal with that high risk of skin cancer anymore because you're now protected.
Number 14, a judgment call.
But I think the daily update is enough for us to make a judgment call.
For the pronunciation, we're going to concentrate on the word judgment. So this word is a bit unique. So there are 2 CH sounds. Now, technically, you're supposed to pronounce the word as judgment. Judgment. There's 2 j sounds. But in North America, what we do is we slightly change that j sound to a ch sound. It's something in between those 2. Judgment. Now you have to be careful and don't over enunciate the sound. So don't say judgment, not correct. Subtle and quieter. Judgment, judgment. Now say the whole thing with me a few more times. A judgment call. A judgment call. A judgment call.
A judgment call is when you have to make a decision, when you have to decide, but there's nothing clear about what is the right thing or what is the wrong thing to do. So you really have to use your own opinion or judgment to decide here. In the conversation, Marty said that the daily update for the air quality was good enough for everybody to make a judgment call. That means that the daily update was informative enough for everybody to take the information away and use their opinion or their judgment in order to decide what is the right thing to do. Now let's move on to some of the examples for this phrase. And the first one is, while some traffic violations can be black and white, the judge still needs to listen to the offenders to make a judgment call. That means while it's so clear in the rules and according to the laws, but some of the cases can be very unique and not deliberately offended. That's why the judge needs to listen to those cases or those offenders to hear more about the details of how they did it. So the judge can make their own final decision whether or not those people are in violation.
Now going on to the second example, being able to make a righteous judgment call is something that employers are looking for in their candidates. So sometimes it's not always easy to know what exactly is right and what is wrong. And especially for management or managers, they need to be able to make a good, righteous judgment call in order to decide the best thing to do next. And that is why many employers are looking for really good candidates who are really good at deciding on what's the best thing to do next.
Number 15. Something is drilled into somebody's head.
Along with that, they had this information drilled into our heads about wildfire prevention and probable health risks, so...
There are only a few pronunciation points here for this phrase, and the first one is about the word drilled. Drilled. So drill, when it is an infinitive, it ends with an L sound, and L is a voiced consonant. So the ED part at the end of this word has to be pronounced as the D sound. So drilled. And the next point is upon the word head. Head. Say the word head, it has to be ended with that D sound and is a voiced consonant. So head, head. That's why you shouldn't turn it into the T sound and say head, head. Nope, it's head. Now say this whole phrase with me a few more times. Something is drilled into somebody's head. One more time. Something is drilled into somebody's head. Something is drilled into somebody's head.
If something is drilled into somebody's head, that means that that knowledge or information has been repeated a lot or over and over again to that person, that they are forced to remember and master that piece of knowledge. In the conversation, after David expressed his surprise at Maddie's knowledge of the subject of wildfires, she said that it wasn't that impressive because the information has been drilled into her head at school. That just means that the information of wildfires has been repeated to her over and over again, that she was forced to remember it. That's why she believed that it wasn't that impressive with the knowledge she had about wildfires. Now that that is all clear, let's go down to the examples. The first one, parents always drill it into their kids' head that they have to look both ways before crossing the street. This is so true because my parents did it for me, and I've seen other parents do it to their kids as well. They always say, now look both ways before you cross the street, making the kid look before going. And it has been repeated over and over and over again that we were forced to remember to look both ways before crossing the street.
And the second example is, as kids are growing up, The language and the culture are simultaneously drilled into their heads. And all of us know this because we used to be kids, right? And as kids, when we grew up, when we hit some certain point in age, let's say when we hit 5 or 7, we had already hit some certain level in our own native tongue. Granted that we couldn't speak properly and fluently around that time, but we could listen and we could understand what other people were saying to us. And the same went for the culture. When we grew up, we kind of got all the knowledge and ideas about our culture ingrained or drilled very deeply in our heads. And so when we grow up, and that forms our values and beliefs associated very deeply with our culture. And that's exactly how the knowledge and the culture were drilled into our heads when we were kids.
Now those are all of the phrases for Conversation 20. Be sure to now go back to the conversation and check your understanding because it's really important to do if you really want to remember these phrases better and at a deeper level.
And as usual, what I'm going to say is that if you like this video or you found it helpful in your own English learning journey, don't hesitate to hit that thumbs up button and also subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on any of our future videos. And I believe that's it for today's video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.